So recently I made a video where I spoke at length about injury and, the big mistake that I think people make when it comes to returning from injury and getting back into a sport or an activity that they used to enjoy, or just trying to build more confidence in the area that was injured. And I'll put a little link to that video here so you can go and watch that if you haven't already. But when it specifically comes to runners, there's a really common injury I see. I've worked with runners for years. I used to work in Hackney where I'd get a lot of people training for the Hackney Half Marathon. I've worked with marathon runners, triathletes, just recreational runners. I've done a lot of time working with runners, and often there are a group of people that do find themselves susceptible to injuries, a lot of overuse injuries, for example, or even, sometimes they just get unlucky with other injuries as well. But the real big obstacle I find when it comes to returning from injury and kind of getting past an injury and you want to return to running is that it's very easy to underestimate how much volume occurs when you're running. So in the gym, we tend to think of exercises and we tend to think of your overall load in terms of repetitions. So let's say you're kind of building your bench press up, you might do 4 sets of 6 reps on your bench press. So that's 24 total reps. And you can, depending on how you're kind of quantifying your workload, you could multiply that by the weight you're using or by the percentage of your maximum that you're using. And you can get a number that gives you a rough sense of the work that's been done on your bench press. And so if you were recovering from a shoulder injury or an elbow injury, maybe you would quantify the work you're doing each week so that you make sure you're gradually building back up your capacity after an injury. But if you've got an injury, say on your knee or your ankle or your calf or your hip, and you're running, and you were to use that similar approach, then you're looking at many more hundreds of repetitions when you go for a run. So let's say, for example, that every step, every kind of landing and push off that you did on the injured side, if every one of those is a repetition, then it might very quickly build up quite a lot of repetitions on that injured area without you really thinking about it. So let's say you normally train for a 10K and you've injured yourself and you're building back up to running, and you might think, I'm going to go for a half an hour run, or I'm going to run 2 or 3K, and I'm just going to go super light, super easy. I'm going to build up from there. The thing that you may not realize is how many hundreds or thousands of steps you take within that run, within that time period. And so although it feels like quite a short run compared to what you're used to, it's, it's very high rep. And it's very high reps with a good percentage of your body weight as well. You spend a long time on one leg. And these are all things that, make it so that although running may not seem like it's comparable to a gym exercise, you are actually encountering quite a lot of load times by, a lot of repetition, a lot of steps. So you might find that to start with, even something like a 2K run, as frustrating as it may be to hear, it might be too much volume. It might be that you need to do a 1K run or a 10-minute run or something really short just to gradually expose yourself back to that running stress. And yes, this probably will feel pointless because it won't feel like a big aerobic stimulus. It won't feel like it's doing much for your actual running performance. But the thing you have to realize is that after an injury, you have a new weakest link. You have a new lowest kind of threshold in what you need to tolerate to run. So if you've injured your knee or your calf or whatever, then when you run, you're no longer limited by your aerobic system or, your running economy or your ability to tolerate higher speeds. You're limited by that one injured area. And that's the area you need to listen to when you're deciding how far you go for a run. So if you are dealing with a running injury and you're frustrated and you feel like you keep getting set back, then try to set your thresholds lower. Try to run shorter distances or shorter durations for a small amount of time, and then, see how you feel the day after and very gradually build that up. Don't jump straight back into a 5K when it's the first run you've done in like 6 weeks and you're not really sure how your injured area is going to feel. Build up even smaller than that, be patient, and eventually, hopefully, if you've got your kind of pathway back to recovery, if you've got that all set and you know what areas you need to strengthen or release or manage, if you've done all that stuff and you just manage your running volume right, then you should be in the right position to gradually build your way back up to your distances that you used to do. As always, if you are stuck with an injury, try not to get too frustrated, try not to give up. There usually are things you can do, and there may not be things that you've thought about yet. So if you do have any questions about your injuries, let me know in the comments below and we'll talk about it. But that's it from me, and I will see you again for the next video.